I want to go to Claire McCaskill. Claire, I'm going to say something that is going to be extraordinarily unpopular, not only for people who are watching, but also in my own household. I think if the Senate hasn't completed writing this bill, I think it is extraordinarily important for the health of this nation. And I just got a note. I've been worried about this all night. And I just got a note from an ambassador who has the same concerns. It's extraordinarily important that Donald Trump's own companies are not exempted from this bill, from this relief. Because by exempting Donald Trump's companies, you give him the worst incentives to reopen this government, or to reopen this country quickly. Donald Trump, and as I said earlier, he makes decisions based on his bottom line. It's always been that way. By exempting Donald Trump and his businesses from getting relief, what you are doing is you're actually encouraging him to make rash decisions that are going to hurt America. And since we have a 5-person panel to make sure that this isn't a slush fund, don't you think the wisest move, the most prudent move, and yes, I will say this, the fairest move that the Senate can make is to let Donald Trump and his companies get the same relief that every other business in their position will be getting. And the same holds true for the senators, for the congressmen and women, and for other leaders. They should be treated no better than everybody else, but should be treated the same as every other business owner.
Yeah, as hard as it is to reconcile the fact that this president has made a lot of money off of being president and uses his properties and promotes his properties like a huckster from the Oval Office, I do think now that there's going to be an inspector general and there's going to be bipartisan congressional oversight, his companies, his business interests should be treated no better or no worse than any other companies. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's sad to say that he would behave like a petulant child and probably do irrational things if his companies were exempted. And there really is not a good, I mean, we can't decide we're going to behave the way he does, especially at a moment of national crisis. He should be included in a fair and transparent way. And maybe that's the most important thing that Chuck Schumer got out of his negotiation was there's now going to be some transparency so the American people can see where this money is going, how it is being used. And the other thing that I didn't mention before that needs to be noted is they made sure that states will get this money not based on whether they're blue or red. We've watched when Trump has tried to withhold federal funding from blue states because they don't do the things he wants them to do. That would be a disaster in this situation when you see the kind of pain that New York is going through and the kind of pain that California has gone through. So I think that the transparency and oversight, absolutely, Donald Trump's businesses should be treated fairly and in a way that all America can have eyes on it.
And so I want to make a plea right now. I usually make pleas to the President of the United States that largely go unheeded. I want to make a plea on behalf of the American people who, again, they may disagree with me, but on behalf of their health, to Chuck Schumer and to Nancy Pelosi. Now that there is transparency, now that you have an inspector general and other people that you're going to help appoint to oversee this, I think it's very important that you allow Donald Trump's companies, the companies of senators, the companies of members of Congress, to be able to be treated no better or no worse than every other small, mid-size, or large business in America. I understand the instincts of putting this provision in, but for the public health of this country. And so the president's only incentive in his mind will be making Americans safe and healthy. You need to strip that provision out and treat the president no better are no worse than everybody else. Yes, I understand. I can hear it already. I hear what you're saying. Isn't it sad? Isn't it terrible that we have a president that's this way? Well, I had a law professor that said you have is and you have ought. What is the law? What ought the law be? We're at the is here. What is our reality? Our reality is that the president is the president. Donald Trump is the president. And it's critical that his only incentive is getting Americans healthy. And you can help move him closer to that side of that line by stripping out that provision and putting in a provision that treats him and other elected officials no better or no worse than every other business owner in America.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.